Welcome, Change Cultivators listeners. Patrick Fitzmaurice here, your host. Great conversation with Mike Jackson. Mike is one of our 40 under 40 global change leaders. If you are not following this series, I would encourage you to do it. Please follow us on LinkedIn. It's how we build our community. So Change Cultivators on LinkedIn, and also subscribe to us on any of your favorite podcast platforms so we can keep this content coming. We have some big plans for Change Cultivators in the coming months and year. And the more we build our connectivity across the community is great. So please show your likes for what we're doing and follow and connect with us. Back to Mike Jackson. Mike runs an organization right now, Black Tech Talent. And his story of how he got there is really compelling, about how he, as a change leader, saw a need in the marketplace. From an early age, you'll hear him tell the story about, how he harnessed some neighborhood activity around entrepreneurial endeavors. So in my takeaway, Mike Jackson is a natural leader who's learned how to be a change leader and has driven that to finding problems to solve and building businesses around them. So enjoy, learn from Mike Jackson, a great 40 under 40 change leader. Mike Jackson, what's up? Congrats to you. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Super excited to have you as one of our 40 under 40 change leaders for 2023. And so thankful that you're taking some time to chat with not just me, but with our listeners on the Change Cultivators podcast. So thank you. Anything you want to say to our listeners right off the bat?
Hopefully I dropped some good gems and some things that are useful and of value to the listeners, and I'm gonna try my best to do so.
Amen. I know you will. Cool. I know. Let's talk a little bit about Black Tech Talent, because it's probably a great way to start thinking about you as a change leader along the way. Tell us a little bit of highlights of your entrepreneurial journey, how you got to Black Tech Talent, and some of the key things that you've learned that kind of our audience is going to say, holy crap, Mike said that. I've got to think that through. So Black Tech Talent, how you got there, lay it on us.
For sure. So been an entrepreneur pretty much, my whole life before I even knew what the term were. All the adults were telling me as a kid, oh, you're an entrepreneur, right? And I had to go look up what that meant, because I just considered myself a business kid. I wasn't a man yet, but a business person. And I realized that, being an entrepreneur really is under the umbrella of, being a business person, but it's, kind of creating and leading the way, and kind of, creating a new path and figuring things out, taking an idea and making it into a business, right? And noting those initial steps on getting to that journey, right? It's doing everything under that umbrella, the marketing and the sales and the innovating and the speaking to customers and the research and the financials. So, I've been into it, since I was young, and it's something that I enjoyed the same way other kids enjoyed painting or bike riding or sports. I enjoyed coming up with ideas and figuring out how to monetize it by bringing joy to others with the ideas that I had. So I've been an entrepreneur, pretty much my whole life. But, it's kind of skipping closer to Black Tech Talent. Prior to that, I had started a company called the Premium Experience. And Premium was essentially a platform where we helped artists and venues better understand their audience through data, and then to retarget them on the platform that we created, which was a website and an app that we had launched. And so I had a background in producing events. I produced concerts with celebrities, celebrity slumber parties, yacht parties, and things of that nature. And one of the things that I produced under that company was a technology conference that targeted Black people. And so I did that here where I'm from, Minnesota. And I'm sitting on stage and I hear, a common theme, which is the need for a pipeline. So you had, the corporation saying, hey, we're willing to be more diverse and hire more Black people in tech, but we don't know where to find them. And then, of course, we have the kind of leaders in the space who are trying to help solve this problem, going, hey, we have a community of people that, we're trying to get into these roles, and we need corporate partners. And then, of course, we have the community and the audience that are looking to, jump into this field and tell their story and be heard on what the struggles are getting into the field or already being in the field, but feeling isolated or not feeling heard. And so me as an entrepreneur, I'm looking and I'm going, what's the disconnect here? right? And so I'm like, well, everybody who's saying they want to be a part of this is in the room, right? And what I realized quickly was that a lot of the, organizers or individuals who were, trying to help solve the problems were nonprofits.
Right.
And, nonprofits, when it comes to, programming, a lot of times they have to chase funding. And just like black small businesses are underfunded, black nonprofits are underfunded as well, and they have way more restrictions than a regular business does. So
Right.
what their money can go to, they could raise money, for instance, and they could be told that this money can't go towards paying staff, has to go strictly towards programming, or vice
Right.
versa. This money is towards staff, it's not towards programming. And so they spend a lot of time not only chasing funds, but then having to kind of curate their original vision into something that fits the funding opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that I realized is that a lot of the corporations, even though they have the money and the power, they don't have the cultural influence in order to market and target black candidates into the field. So even though
Right.
people are interested in the jobs, they're not getting enough coming through the pipeline. And part of that is because the ones who are coming through the pipeline aren't getting the jobs, or they're not getting the type of recognition that they're looking for. So that led me to creating Black Tech Talent.
So cool. Okay, a couple things I want to poke at there if you're open to this.
Yeah.
So one, you kind of said you're a business kid, which I love that phrase, right? It's kind of like wired into you. You told me a couple of stories, I think, about your early childhood business endeavors, and I think it just shows kind of how you have a changed nature to you. You're not fearful to go out. And I think there's a couple of stories you told about how you may have been a little bit of my words, not yours at the time, bit of a ringleader of getting a posse together to go sell some stuff and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, just give us a nugget, because I think it's just so cool about defines you a little, I've known about you. Give a little nugget to that, because I do think it's so illuminating to as are change leaders born or created. I don't know. You fall in the born camp for me based on those stories. So give us a little bit about one of those early entrepreneurial stories.
For sure. So, like I said, always been an entrepreneur, but I'm a hybrid, right? Which is kind of rare to be like actually creative and actually like business minded. And so, one of the things that my mom was telling the story too. So I used to love drawing pictures. And one day I decided I wanted to make some money, and at this time I'm probably 6, and so I'm drawing these pictures, and I went out and I got a couple of my friends together, and I think by the end of it there was like 4 or 5 of us, and I asked them if they wanted to play a game, and they were like, sure. And I was like, let's see who can sell the most of these pictures. And so we were selling the black and white ones for, I want to say, $2, and then if I colored them they were $5. So we sold out of most of the pictures I had drawn, and then I was like, I got to do this faster. So then I left them outside to keep selling, and I went inside and I was tracing from my coloring books so I could draw the characters faster. And I was just pumping them out. And by the end of the day, I think we had made like 20 or $30 just going through the townhouse association I lived in at 6 years old.
It's so cool. So, okay, change listeners are listening to us on this podcast, have this conversation. What would they take away from that story? Like, what would you tell? Look, as a change leader, this is what I did at 6. You need to make sure that you're not afraid of this, or you need to go do this. What nugget would you get out of that story as you reflect back on that in your past?
Yeah, I mean, knowing being at where I'm at today and thinking back to that, it's like I was thinking about scale. I was like, I can't be out here selling. I got to go back in and draw, and I got to draw quicker. So I'm going to trace. We had, price differentiation from colored to just plain black and white. I had put together a crew so I could delegate. Like all these little things at 6 that came naturally, even though I didn't know that I was doing those things, right? And so I think those are the nuggets from an adult point of view, is like delegation, right? Scalability, putting together a team of people that you trust and believe in, and sharing in the wealth, making sure everybody's having fun and enjoying what they're doing. But I would also throw out there, because, as change cultivators, we're here to help others, right? And give them game. So for the other change cultivators and aspiring change cultivators, I would say like that's why it's important to nurture the youth as well, because I didn't have that, right? So I was doing
Right.
these things that were actually the right things to do, but nobody told me that. And if that had been sown into me or been kind of nurtured throughout my youth, then I could have been successful a lot quicker. I think things happen as they're supposed to happen and when they're supposed to happen. Um, but also like have being set on the right path or having the confidence that you're going in the right direction, even if this may not be your breakout project, is nice to have. So I think us as people who, as you mentioned, kind of born with it and have it naturally, being able to, see that in somebody else, whether it's a youth or an adult that's just not in the industry or in the game yet and they need some guidance, I think us being able to provide that to them is important.
So, listeners, I would just say you just had some kind of a little masterclass from 6-year-old Mike Jackson.
There you
so,
go.
so cool. Thanks for telling that. I appreciate it. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. One of the other things you said to us, great young change leaders, right? And we talked a little bit
Mhm.
about the struggle to actually be in the room, right? Where'd you learn
Yeah.
that? Like this notion of as a change leader, one of the things you got to make sure as a young change leader is you got to be in the room. And we've heard that from some of our other 40 under 40, but I want your perspective on what that meant to you when you said those words to me.
For sure. Yeah. It came from really me being, more naturally an introvert and not an introvert in the sense of like being like overly shy or things
Let
like
me
that.
interrupt you.
Yeah.
Introverted 6-year-olds don't go out start selling the things that they're drawing and recruit their neighborhood kids to do that. So no, I totally get what
Yeah.
you're saying, but it's just so
Yeah.
funny.
And even speaking to that, like I've always wanted to be more successful than not. So even if I had a personal thing that would hinder that success, I would overcome it for the sake of wanting to be successful. So, and that's kind of where that came from. So, you know, even as a young adult, I was, networking as much as I could, but didn't really know how to get to those bigger networks where you would meet angel investors or VCs or politicians or, trying to figure out where do they hang out? How do I get into those networks? And so, I had always, networked, but trying to be more intentional about where I was networking, who I was networking with. And so a lot of times when opportunities would come up to just go meet people, I would always have this battle internally. And if you're introverted and you're listening, you know what this is. So, it kind of goes through the sense of like, well, is it going to be worth it? And kind of like, who's going to be there? And like, am I going to even come out of my shell enough to make this, a value versus an extrovert who doesn't even worry about all that. They're just going to go have a good
Right.
time no matter what. And so a specific example was I was sitting on my computer, an event popped up and it was about to happen within like an hour. And for me as an introvert, I rarely do any last minute things. Like I got to know ahead of time what I've committed to. But it seemed like a good networking opportunity. The mayor of St. Paul, which is our first black mayor here in Minnesota, was going to be there speaking. There was going to be some angel investors and some VCs there, other people in technology, and so I was going through that you know internal battle, and I was like thinking all these things, and I was like, well, it would be good to connect with the mayor and whatever else. So I ended up going, forced myself to go. I went, I took my time, kind of opened up, started networking more and more. I saw a couple faces that I was familiar with. Made my way through the room. I didn't make it to the mayor because he had another speaking engagement, and of course, he got bombarded as soon as he stopped speaking, and then went out the elevator. But as I was, walking through, somebody who knew me grabbed me and was like, "Hey, this person is looking for something to do. She's in town for the next 2 days, and she's trying to kind of, check out the city. And I know you produce events." And so that woman I ended up connecting with was the one who brought me on to help with that first tech
That's
conference that
cool.
I threw. And
That's
so for
cool.
me, from that point on, I was like, I just got to be in the room, right? I got to
Right.
like, because sometimes I'm there to meet somebody, right? Like I wanted to meet the mayor, I wanted to connect with some of these investors, and I did connect with some of the investors while I was there. but then sometimes you're there to be met. And that was kind of the epiphany that I had. It's like I'm somebody important as well. I'm somebody of value. And by me being in the room, even if I don't meet who I'm going to meet or don't meet anybody I don't already know, sometimes
Right.
I'm meant to be there so somebody can meet me. And so from that point on, I've always pushed myself to just make sure that I'm in the room. And that's been my philosophy ever since.
It's a great one. It's a great one, and I got a couple with it. What I think is another of your philosophies, which is being really intentional as a change leader,
Yeah.
right? So you can be in the room, that's fine, but I think I heard you say, look, you have to be intentional. What does that mean?
Yeah. So, you know, this came from probably my early 20s, and um like I said, I'm a creative and an entrepreneur. So I was making films and screenwriting, and I've won some screenwriting competitions and some poetry awards and things of that nature. And we were trying to kind of, me and my friend, we were kind of trying to break into the film industry, and we were like, like if we want to win this stuff, we got to like write what wins, not just what we want to create, right? And so I started saying it. I started saying like we got to be intentional. And he was like, he was a couple years younger than me. And he was like, "What does that mean?" And I couldn't really explain it specifically. I was just like, "We gotta like whatever wins, that's what we gotta create. Whatever it is that needs to be done, that's the area we have to be in, right?" And so now, of course, with having created Premium and Black Tech Talent and being in business a lot longer, it's easier for me to explain what that means. And it's just about setting your intentions for what you want to accomplish in any situation, right? And so if I'm going somewhere to network, what is my intention on networking, right? Like, what's the crowd that I'm looking to meet with? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to speak about while I'm there, right? What
Right.
message do I want to get across? And so we implement that into everything we do, from our events. When we have events under Black Tech Talent, okay, this is a great event. It's a great idea. We're going to have fun, but what are the intentions? What products do we want to release? Or what's the ROI that we want to get on this? And so we have to be intentional about, the way we move with our lives, with our relationships, with the things that we want to create and release. And by having that intention, it just makes everything much more clearer, right?
So good. So good. It's such a good lesson. I love it. Look, I could talk to you all day, right? There's so much stuff that you've done. I just love hearing your journey because it's such a compelling journey. However, we can't talk forever. So I'm going to
Right.
wrap us up. But hopefully you and I will find more times to interact in the future. So thank you for sharing your thoughts as a younger change leader with our audience. I think it's really, really powerful. Congrats to you on being part of our group, and best of luck in all the things that you're doing and all the mountains you're conquering. It's really awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.